Change is inevitable, but a lot of the time in video games, while characters and stories might take twists and turns, the world itself doesn't automatically follow suit. When it does happen, it's beyond satisfying though, and it shows the devs put in a little extra effort just to make this game hit just a bit harder. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 games where the world actually changes. Starting off with number 10, it's Batman Arkham Asylum. The total area of Arkham Asylum is pretty small, but they really managed to pack in a lot for such a compact area. One of the most impressive things about the first Arkham game is how the environment is constantly evolving in response to the escalating riot. What starts off as a relatively straightforward prisoner riot devolves into total anarchy by the end of the game. But what makes it interesting compared to other games that pull this kind of trick is how the game slowly changes the world over time, rather than just instantly flipping the map into something different, like how this thing is normally done when it's done. Like, don't tell me you can't instantly recall a game where this earth-shattering development happens and it fades to black, load screen, and it comes back and, oh man, there were consequences for those actions. The world looks so different. And just to be clear, that's not quite what this list is. Arkham Asylum evolves with the story of the game. The environment changes the environment. That makes perfect sense. It's not just event level different. At the start of the game, the asylum looks completely normal. There's prisoners that are free, but there's still guards manning checkpoints, and most of the building remains intact. The situation seems to be at least somewhat under control, but things keep getting worse and worse. Everything that happens in the story is actually reflected in the rest of the game world. When Harley releases all the criminally insane patients, you now find them wandering all over the island.
And speaking of riots, here's a bit of civil unrest I cooked up just for you.
Places where prison guards used to be staken out, they've been overrun. Formerly safe checkpoints have snipers in them, all while goons are putting up big decorations for the party at the end of the night. Stuff gets knocked down, messes get made. All this stuff slowly builds up as you progress through the game. The biggest change comes from when Poison Ivy gets free and her plants spread all over the island. Now there's weird plants everywhere and infected prisoners.
Looks like the plants are mutating further.
Many previous areas look completely different and are much harder to navigate because there's vines everywhere. A lot of areas are completely changed, but they still managed to make it so all the Riddler challenges are still accessible. Yay, nothing more important than that. It's kind of wild looking at how the asylum looks at the start of the game compared to the end. It's night and day, but it doesn't happen with the flick of a switch. The other Arkham games do stuff like this, but the smaller overall area of Asylum makes it easier to appreciate all the little details, also probably easier to do them. Focusing on a 10 by 10 square versus a 100 by 100 square is, of course, a very different thing. But still, the island just feels a little different every time you go to different places. And number 9 is Pathologic 2, where in Batman the world changes around for story reasons. Pathologic 2 is a little more reactive, I guess is the way I would want to put it. The 2019 follow-up to the cult classic original is a hell of a lot more accessible than the first game, but that doesn't mean it's easy. The plot sounds straightforward enough. You play as a doctor who arrives to this unnamed town with one goal: to treat people afflicted with an unknown plague and hopefully find a cure. You have 12 real-time days to do it, and the plague spreads all on its own, so depending on what you do, the characters get sick, die, and potentially infect entire districts. It's an RPG as much as a survival game. Characters give you quests, they can banter with you for resources, and depending on your actions, you can improve your relationship with them, which is good, because at the start of the game, you're basically homeless and everyone wants to beat you up on sight.
Foolish. Foolish. How foolish I was.
The town starts off bad, but it only gets worse from there. There's no way to completely stop the infection because there's just no way to treat everyone who's sick in a single day, so eventually you're forced to decide who you want to live and who you're willing to let die. There's nothing you have to do. Every quest can be failed and the game will keep going, so it's possible to really screw things up and just have the entire town become a horrifying disease-ridden mess. Or if you're really good at the game, you can make things relatively stable. It's always going to get worse, but smart players can at least make it so it's not a total disaster. Pathologic 2 is a grim and surreal experience and has one of the most interesting and reactive game worlds out there. People change, places change, stuff gets piled up, and by stuff I mean stuff. It's a weird game. In fact, both of the Pathologic games are weird games. But I think it's super hard to argue that Pathologic 2 doesn't belong on this list. It's kind of a perfect candidate. At number 8 is Dying Light 2. The changing world of Dying Light 2 is very mechanically driven. Sure, you can either side with the peacekeepers or the survivors by rewarding them territory, but that doesn't actually affect the story much. These factions treat your guy like dirt regardless of what you do, so the main reason you'll side with one faction or another is because of the mechanical benefits they give you, and for cosmetic reasons as well. How this system works is that the city of Valor in Dying Light 2 is split up into districts. There are a few that are automatically controlled by the militaristic peacekeepers or the more agrarian, freewheeling survivors. But the rest of the city is basically abandoned and taken over by the end. As it progressed through the game, you can clear out important infrastructure like water towers, electrical stations, and windmills, and then reward the district to one of the two sides. When you do, it completely transforms that area depending on the faction. Give it to the peacekeepers, they construct metal fortresses, build guard towers, and have their riot gear-clad soldiers patrolling the streets to make the ground a safer place to explore. They're called the peacekeepers, people. Yeah, they're a little dystopian, but I think Dying Light 2 isn't exactly kumbaya.
What's going on here? Who turned it off?
Who do you think?
You gonna be a smart ass now?
I'm just saying, let's get him.
But if it looks just a little bit too much like totalitarianism to you, there is the flip side. You can give the district to the survivors. They build their homes on the rooftops, they expand their gardens, and generally make the rooftops a safer place to be and the city a lot more visually appealing. And on top of that, they don't do any of that annoying hippie talk like, but what do you really do, man? No, thankfully, the dichotomy is not those uncool, totally square order fascists versus hippies. No tie-dye in a survivor camp, thank you very much. No, freedom isn't depicted as hippies here, which is nice. Now, I've played the game both ways, and I don't really have a preference per se. I know there's plenty of people who do, but it even goes further than this. Depending on how many districts you give to either side, you can unlock additional faction rewards that transform the world even more. Peacekeepers make it so that traps appear all over the place, including turrets and car traps, while giving a lot of territory to the survivors makes it significantly easier to traverse the city. They'll put out zip lines, bounce pads called airbags. You can use those to jump onto roofs. It's kind of a completely unrealistic and silly thing, but man, are they fun. They open up air vents to make it easier to paraglide everywhere. It's really great. The world and the way it changes as you take over districts is probably the best thing about the game. Even if you don't want to help either faction because they're both annoying jerks, basically, which I like, it's still fun to see the world change so dramatically over time. Moving on to number 7 is Prototype. Where Pathologic 2 is slow, contemplative, and very difficult, Prototype is blunt, stupid, and extremely entertaining. There are few open-world games where the entire map changes gradually over the course of the game. Both Marvel Spider-Man games do it to a certain extent, Web of Shadows does it, the Infamous games do it, but for a few reasons, I find the way the map changes in Prototype to be the most fun. After playing through an apocalyptic prologue, the game dumps your guy into a mostly recognizable New York. Cars fill the streets, people are walking everywhere, the sky is blue, cats and dogs sleeping separately. Mass normalcy! Well, not completely. It's mostly your standard open world city, but as the game goes along, things just get worse and worse. The plague causing the lockdown in Manhattan Island spreads very fast as the game goes on, and more of the map gets covered in red. Instead of normal people, there's zombies and monsters everywhere, and at the heart of these infection zones is a building. It's not clear if you're just rushing through the game, but depending on if you take out the infected structures or disable military bases, the infection can either subside or get worse.
Hold your fire, Ground. I'll take it off.
It is a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because either you're dealing with zombie monsters or military tanks and vehicles. So you're mostly clearing these places for fun. No matter what you do, the infection is always going to get worse, and the zones controlled by the military are always going to have more soldiers. What's especially fun about it is that as the game goes on, though, the military is in constant battle with the infected. By the end of the game, it's just pure chaos, and every street is lined with tanks battling it out with infected. In contrast to most open-world games where the world gets safer as you progress through the story and you clear out the bad guy bases and the threat has subsided somewhat, in this game, things only ever get worse. It would be kind of depressing if it wasn't so much fun. At number 6 is Prey from 2017. One of the many interesting things about Arcane's Prey is that, at least in the first half, it feels like a fairly straightforward immersive sim. The ship is interconnected, but you're experiencing each area in a fairly linear fashion, and you go from the opening labs to the lobby to the hardware labs to psychotronics and so on and so forth. But at a certain point in the game, after you've been almost everywhere and unlocked all the airlocks, the progression suddenly gets a lot more non-linear.
Logging software agnostic. Files corrupted. List. Streets. Service.
This could be a controversial part of the game, but personally, I think it's awesome. As the game progresses, the alien beings notice that Typhons start slowly taking over the station. At first, it looks fairly recognizable, with only a few enemies wandering around the abandoned halls, but the longer you're on the station, the more the infection grows and weird alien atmosphere starts to appear everywhere. All the places you've previously been to become a lot more dangerous, with more difficult enemies appearing all over the place. What makes things even worse is that if you were thorough traveling through these places the first time, they're mostly picked clean of resources. So not only are these places more dangerous, you're also running low on stuff like ammo or healing, which makes it even harder. The second half of the game forces you to engage with the game's systems just a little bit more. You gotta collect junk to bring back to the recycler to make precious ammo. You have to move carefully and avoid dangerous enemies or find new routes through each zone that you weren't able to access before. Now, you aren't just exploring these carefully designed clockwork environments for fun. You need to learn the best routes through them and really explore their nooks and crannies and get as much resources as you can. And it's also in the second half that you come to understand the layout of the station a lot better, where the safe zones are, where the medical bays and repair robots are hiding. The station is less of a place to explore in the second half and more like a navigation puzzle, and that completely alters the way you're playing the game. Some people find this part of the game tedious and frustrating, but for me, it's stuff like this that makes Prey one of the best immersive sims of all time. At number 5 is Vampire. This action RPG is developed by Don't Nod, the guys behind the original Life is Strange and the more recent Banishers Ghosts of New Eden. It's another game about a deadly outbreak, and there's a little bit of a pathologic-like task to develop a cure. The hope is to treat the infected so the city of London doesn't fall into ruin. What makes this game different is in the title. You play as a vampire, and the thing you're supposed to be fighting is a vampire plague. In order to get stronger as a vampire, you have to hunt and kill people who are NPCs all over the place. They get sick naturally, and you can cure them, but the fewer people you eat, the less experience you get. And you need experience because certain choices actually cost experience to perform, and combat can get pretty tough late in the game if you're not drinking blood. But the more blood you drink, the more the infection spreads. And if you choose to kill an important character referred to as a pillar of the community, then the infection really gets out of control fast.
Burn it, boys!
It can get so bad that entire districts fall into ruin, everyone dies, the lights go out, and the place it's just dead, basically. New enemies start wandering around the streets, vendor prices go up everywhere, it's bad. The central district, the hospital, is unsurprisingly the safest part of the city, but you can even ruin that place. Kill the head doctor and the infection spreads like wildfire, and if the hospital falls, it literally closes. That's obviously something that has pretty specific ramifications for a plague-ridden city. You kind of need the hospital, for the plague thing everybody's got. All this stuff can actually royally screw up your story, but the game lets you do it anyway. You can be a truly reluctant vampire that just wants to help people in exchange for being weak in a fight, or you can be a real bastard and leave the city in ruins. There's certainly merits to either way of playing, and you get different outcomes, and that gives Vampire actually a pretty surprisingly large amount of replay value. It can really be a fun game to experiment with how things can go. And number 4 is Outer Wilds, essentially a puzzle exploration game with a lot going on, but the central mechanic is this time loop. You have 22 minutes to explore this miniature solar system. Either you die, or 22 minutes ends and the whole thing starts over again. Many of the little planets you explore change pretty significantly over these 22 minutes. The Hourglass Twins have one planet dumping sand into another in real time, burying the caves of one while slowly emptying out the other one. There's another planet that gets torn apart by a miniature black hole at the center of the planet that opens up new places to explore or blocks off routes as the planet falls apart. There's a moon where lava drains over time, and a comet that has a certain trajectory through the solar system. All this stuff is happening in real time, and figuring out when you should explore a planet and how to do it is a big part of the puzzle. The DLC has even more drastic changes. In it, you explore an abandoned station hidden in the solar system, which is built like a ring. At a certain point in the cycle, a dam breaks and the entire station becomes flooded, structures break, new areas pop up, completely alters the landscape. Yeah, these changes are never permanent because it's all reset after 22 minutes, but I mean, that's kind of the point of the game, and it's a really very interesting game. It's not for everybody, but there's something in it for a certain type of person that is very interesting. And number 3 is Death Stranding. What starts off as the world's weirdest delivery man simulator becomes so much more as the game progresses. At first, you're stuck trudging around this broken world on foot like an idiot, tumbling all over the place, taking forever to get anywhere or do anything. The ultimate goal of Death Stranding is to work smarter, not harder. Like, the whole point of the game is to reestablish this network that allows you to build more infrastructure in the world, which makes it easier to traverse, which makes it so you can perform deliveries more efficiently. In the beginning, you only have very basic tools for getting around, like a foldable ladder and a rope, but as the game goes on, you connect more and more bunkers in the network, you get access to bigger and better things that don't just make getting around easier, they completely transform the environment. Suddenly, you're seeing roads and bridges and big zip lines all over the place. There's machines going back and forth performing deliveries automatically, and road signs and signs of life everywhere. Almost anything you do affects the environment in some way, from peeing to walking in the same direction over and over again, which eventually creates a trail, which is, I mean, that's such a cool idea. When you enter a new area in the game, it starts off barren and empty, but once you've spent some time there, it's covered in roads and power stations and shortcuts. It doesn't just look cool, it totally alters how you're playing the game. And this is really the meat of Death Stranding. A lot of people talk about how confusing the story is, but in a lot of ways, it's a really innovative systems game, and not a lot of people really talk about that. Probably because it's very easy to say Delivery Man Simulator. And also fun, it's fun to say that too. I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of fun to say that.
Delivering cargo.
What took you so long?
And number 2 is the Saboteur. When you first arrive in Paris in the Saboteur, it's a bleak place. Set during World War II, in the occupation of Paris, the streets are lined with guards, there's enemy depots and checkpoints, barbed wire everywhere, and to top it all off, the world is pretty drained of color. Everything's black and white, with the occasional splash of red. In this game, your goal is to liberate Paris one section at a time. You destroy a German base and color returns in the world in that area. and people will walk a little more freely. Enemy patrols will get much thinner. It's sort of a twist on a thing a lot of games did at the time, like Okami or Prince of Persia, where you're restoring nature to a location. But in this game, instead of making some flowers appear, you're literally bringing back color to the city. It can be a slow process completely clearing out a zone of occupiers, but once you've blown up every tank and guard tower, they stay gone. All the ugly metal structures can be destroyed as well. Some people prefer the moodier black and white version of the city, and sure, it's pretty silly how one guy is basically able to single-handedly liberate all of Paris from the Nazis, but whatever, it's a unique mechanic and it makes the game stand out. And finally, at number 1, Project Zomboid. This survival game tries to accurately depict what would happen in a zombie apocalypse, and that includes the fall of civilization. When the game starts, everything looks pristine, houses are clean, lawns are mowed, there's still television and running water, which you can take advantage of, but as the days go by, these services get shut off one by one. First, the power goes out everywhere, then the taps shut off, so you no longer have a free source of water. Well, clean water anyway. I mean, there's bad water out there all over the place, but all the food starts to spoil, grass starts to grow, buildings get dirtier, eventually the walls start to crack, roads start to get grown over with trees and grass. Nature reclaims everything. It's a dramatic transformation that's not just cosmetic. It makes survival more difficult as well. All the things you rely on at the start of the game, like scrounging for food and houses, it stops working. You're forced to find new and more primitive ways to survive. You either have to start hunting animals or try growing a farm, neither of which are easy. It's also extremely eerie after a while. There's something about seeing a place that looks like a neighborhood from The Sims fall into total ruin that kind of puts me on edge. It's the change that makes the eventual ruins you see in Project Zomboid stand out. I do have a couple of bonuses for you as well. The first one's Mega Man X. It's kind of an interesting mechanic. In the first Mega Man X game, sometimes levels would dramatically change based on the order you played them. I thought it was really, really cool at the time, because obviously we only had Mega Man up to that point, which was NES, and it was a system of meager means. It didn't have a lot of that type of capability. So Mega Man X was kind of a tour de force, but it was the only one that they actually did something like this in, at least to this degree. It's a shame because it's a fun bit of reactivity that you don't normally see in games from this era. There's a bunch of fire in Flame Mammoth stage, for instance, but if you beat Chill Penguin first, the level gets frozen over. It makes the level way easier. And if you beat Storm Eagle's level before Spark Mandrels, the electricity goes out. There's fewer sparks on the ground, but the level is darker, so it's, I mean, a trade-off in a little bit of a way. I think it's probably still a little easier despite the darkness. Beat Launch Octopus's level, and Sting Chameleon's place gets flooded, and that changes the level completely. It's a good idea that encourages players to go through the game using different routes, but for whatever reason, they abandon this concept in the rest of the series. Yeah, I know X2 has one level where you can change things, but I don't think that really counts. And then the last one I have for you is Final Fantasy VI. It's a classic example from the Super Nintendo era, really when they kind of had the power to finally try this kind of stuff. The Final Fantasy series loves to change the map in games. Final Fantasy 3, 4, and 5 all did this. 3, obviously, to a lesser degree, being SNES, and also Final Fantasy being a game that relies on a lot less movement than Mega Man X does. But Final Fantasy VI doesn't just take you in a new world, it completely remakes the old one. More than halfway through the game, a dramatic event occurs that completely alters the map forever, creating a world of ruin, basically a post-apocalyptic, completely rearranging map, and changing locations of pretty much every major location in the game. Some are just gone for good, others get dramatic makeovers, but everything's changed and it's mostly for the worse. With the story, I mean, the actual world is awesome. It's got an ominous purple sky and haunting overworld music. In a lot of RPGs that have a destroyed world, they eventually find some way to reverse it, but this one, no. You don't go back to the world of balance. It's gone for good. This is history and it's happened. I think that's really neat. I also included this one in bonus because if you remember at the beginning, I kind of said something happens and it fades out and then things fade back in and everything's different. This is an example of that, but it's just a really cool example of that, and I wanted to include it for that reason. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.